Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of infidelity, betrayal, and redemption. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. 34 and devastated. 13 years. 13 years of unemployment, underemployment, shit jobs with college debt and broken hearts. 13 years took their toll, but I finally had a preview of what could be light at the end of the tunnel. I had a home, a wife and a child after all our struggles, and I finally felt like we had time to fix our lives together. At least, that's what I thought. We struggled so hard. I put her through college. I busted my ass to finish entry-level certifications for a job that barely pays above retail with a 4-year degree. We did this while trying to raise a little girl. All for nothing. Instead of reaching the finish line, instead of healing our marriage, it was easier for her to walk away and run off with another man. Now I can't even afford justice with a lawyer, and, since Florida is a no-fault state, I had to move out of my home to sell it, have to carve my daughter's life in two, and stay in the shitty job just to make ends meet with no end in sight. Everyone keeps telling me it will get better. My life isn't even recognizable to myself anymore. I'm arguably back further than when I met my wife 10+ years ago. I am 34. Unattractive, and my whole life was in that family that now doesn't want me. When amicable becomes controlling. Rant. The short discovery day was in November after the family had our first Thanksgiving in a long time. We were on the mend when she decided to instead act on an impulse and end it after no attempt at couples counseling. She had assured me that holiday we would confront what was making us distant. She decided that was too much effort. I caught her in a lie, and since I have fortunately never questioned her fidelity before, the lie was difficult to counter with the usual gaslighting. That very night we set a roadmap for our separation and divorce. At the beginning of the relationship 13 years ago, I told her before staring our 10-year marriage. I told her she could leave at any time, but I would never forgive cheating because I felt personally I could never trust a cheating partner. I gave her every chance to communicate. I initiated every effort to mend the rift. The effort was asymmetric. She asked for the divorce to be amicable. Her most recent experience with divorce was her brother in a loveless marriage. His wife took everything and went for full custody. I was so destroyed that she was putting more effort in damage control than actually fixing our marriage that I considered it a parting gift. We would co-parent our daughter. She would keep the new car. I would keep her old car. She would either refinance the house and buy me out, or we would sell it and split if she couldn't get a loan. There was no duress or coercion. Just me being broken and her caring more about her exit than the 10 years she killed for an impulse with no solid exit plan. Fast forward to us moving out. It turned out she couldn't refinance the house. I found a house flipper and held her to the sale. We both moved out. It suddenly went from our plan to controlling her. She waited to the last day moving out her stuff before signing the papers for the sale. Our parenting plan suddenly is too burdensome, and she is always late with her schedule, picking up or dropping off our daughter on time. She questions everything we agreed to. She wants to pull our daughter out of a grade A school we agreed to in the parenting plan to do virtual under the guise of safety. She is accusing me of not filing my finances after I gave her my tax documents. Amicable. I know it is terribly inconvenient to divorce someone. She obviously wasn't happy. It astonishes me that you can give the person what they asked for and they still aren't happy. I am looking forward to grieving the death of this marriage. I hope I can keep it together to its completion. I just want closure. Way to avoid self-destruction? Need support. Long story short, I am an INTJ. When I observe someone, I really analyze them. After my separation started, I began asking what everyone asks themselves after a separation. Was it me? Fun fact, INTJs go into a recurring loop sometimes when in distress and overanalyze things. Things like read is where you ask how ugly you are physically and unintentionally hold myself against standards in these advice discussions. So without too much poetic justice, how does someone stop judging oneself? I know my soon-to-be ex is happy with her now second affair after we separated. Why can't I let myself be happy too? I didn't cheat on her. My conscience is clear of that. Why can't I stop feeling like I wasn't attractive enough, gentle enough, smart enough or keen enough after 13 years of being confident I was the one who made her happy the way I did? When was it welcome anymore? I need to be able to do this, but I'm trapped. I'm trapped in a job that didn't appreciate me when I was trying to keep my family afloat. I was used like a life raft of misery to get her through college and grad school. She used me up. I should feel better that she isn't using me anymore. Right? Does it get better? Self-image. Advice. So fair warning. I know this is petty and everyone wants to find some spiritual higher meaning in it, but I'll keep it open because I need to address the negative before it destroys me. My self-image unfortunately got tied into my failed marriage. I never cared how I appeared to the public. I cared only about what my ex and I exchanged with friends and family because they were the only ones who I thought at the time cared. Fast forward to my wife cheating on me with friends and family becoming enablers, and I am flat on my ass on an island close to a few friends left over and family that can only provide distant emotional support, but miles away from making any other connections. I get it. Some people like to be hermits. I'm oddly in a small camp where I don't need millions of social media faces. I need one or two good people, and hopefully what I feel is a life partner. A problem that could develop into codependency, but I digress to leave open answers. I am extremely picky under usual circumstances, but I decided to tackle the problem head on. I read advice columns and articles to try and plot a course to get out of my self-destructive introspection. Bullet points like consider transitional relationships and find what's fun about you again to supplement the physical health aspects with mental health advice. Nice. Dating profile created. Let the shit show begin. One problem. I forgot how to be approachable and I'm not quite Tinder attractive. What few people respond are quite awful. I set low standards on physical appearance for the sake of meeting new people, and no joke, the first person I had dinner with catfished me. I went in with enthusiasm because I wanted to meet new people, not faces. She left for the bathroom when the check came to ghost the end of the date. I don't think I missed out, but my confidence was already tanking. This was a new docu. My whole marriage to my ex, I found confidence in our inner beauty. Turns out I was just the safe husband. Now I am digging the bottom of a barrel to find something that isn't garbage. I don't like what I'm becoming. Before anyone love bombs me, understand that I am physically unattractive. Personality glow can only do so much, and the stigma of single divorced dad is a lot harder than the stigma of single divorced hot dad. I'm not aiming for the next one to be the one. I'm looking to find myself and what I want before I'm too old, currently 34, and can't meet my relationship goals before my age bracket becomes creepy old dude. Dark thoughts advice. Considering the nature of this Reddit, I will be careful in my wording and any responses taken in a completely hypothetical context. The question? If I put myself in my soon-to-be ex's mindset, how would I be any different? I knew she was unhappy and I was on eggshells trying to get her into counseling. That puts me at peace, but there was one thought I recall that disgusted me for even being in my mind. At one point I thought about cheating on her and telling her soon after. I hid this one to myself and actually considered discussing divorce with my closest friends and family when she first turned down counseling roughly 1 year before the affair as a counter-thought. Here's what terrifies me: what if she had the same thought process, but under duress didn't think things through? What if she wanted to be caught in a lie, so it would be easier to end things? I hate finding myself in these thought processes, but am I the only one second-guessing myself on this? Is actions being stronger than words a cop-out? I feel less justified thinking this and I don't like it. Am I a covert narcissist like she is? Journal entry 5 months ago. Progress March 4. My heart sank. The divorce is becoming more of a reality. She already knew the house was in the process of being sold. I've taken the legal and mandatory steps to establish a plan. My wife and I have explained the changes. She would be moving into an apartment, I would be moving into my parents'. We aren't fighting or doing anything to undermine our daughter's mental well-being. She now somehow has it in her mind she is being adopted. I'm doing my best to keep my daughter afloat. She feels the anxiety of me moving back into a home I haven't lived in over 12 years, but she senses something isn't right. Between the overtime worked, the selling the house, and keeping a face on, I'm on the verge of collapse. I hug her and tell her never in a million years. I would never give her up. I can't cry in front of her. I die a little inside. She doesn't deserve this. I need to do better. A house flipper has approached me. The house repairs would have taken months. I'm ready to cut and run from that forsaken place. My wife will fight me. Both our names are on it. I don't think she cares if it takes longer. My daughter needs a better home. I need to do better. _end. I'm coming up on half a year. Holding my breath to see the better. Journal entry. Weeks post DD. Progress February 23 RD. My shell of a home is nothing but boxes and broken memories. Shards of our formerly shared love are everywhere. I feel stabbing pains in my heart each time I pass through the articles that once held strong sentiment and adoration for my partner. My wife had no exit plan. She wanted to keep the house but couldn't afford it. We agreed to be civil and sell. I was wronged, but I just wanted out at that point since it meant nothing to me without her. The true hurt is much closer to me. My daughter doesn't recognize the warmth her home used to give. It's cold, desolate, alien. Her toys and comforts need to be delivered to her grandparents. She will have a fortunate oasis in a desert of a crumbling marriage. Some familiarity she will keep while this blows over. I was beside myself. Everyone told me to stay in that hell till the papers were signed. The house was sold. The divorce finalized. Each day in that hell was a mockery to what I once had. All my efforts to keep that home afloat were gutted and packaged. Nights became quiet. The wife didn't sleep on the couch anymore. She was shaking up with her new flame. I didn't care. I sleep alone. The nights are colder. Progress was made. I returned to work without a missed beat after we began packing. I cannot afford to miss any time to grieve my marriage. I told my co-workers my story in order to vent. Some cared. Others enjoyed the spectacle at my expense. I have no shame. There is nothing to mourn until I am out of that house. A few days pass. The days got rainy. The following day I tried to beat a downpour. I gave my daughter more of her personal belongings to her grandparents. My wife is home. I thought she was cleaning out more of her personal effects. I was wrong. I recognized immediately that something was off. She wasn't sorting anything and was standing in the doorway wide-eyed. I looked down the hallway and followed her gaze to confirm what was happening. She said nothing. She was ashamed. Petrified. I walked toward the office where I assumed the source of the shame was. I heard incoherent babbling as I approached the doorway. The words didn't matter. The intent was self-preservation. No matter how hard the other man tried to convey his regrets, the air that escaped his vocal cords were hollow. His empathetic gestures were meaningless. I turned my back on him and ignored his pleas. His whimpering and appeals only irritated me as I returned to my wife. I was in a pool of shattered memories. Boxes full of broken dreams, and I stared her in the face. Tired. Beaten. Without understanding. She first attempted to make eye contact with me. She looked away again. Embarrassed. Her new flame was in the other room still. Cowering. I searched my wife for an answer. to understand this hurt and disrespect. She had none. She hadn't planned for me to show up that day. It was apparent. I was just an inconvenience at this point. She realized it was time to go and summoned her new lover to leave with her. I watched the other man crawl out of the office at a cautious pace. He realized that I would not take violence upon him at my wife's calls. I don't know what stopped me. It wasn't that I couldn't. I could have easily throttled him, but my mind was only fixated on who would be able to raise my daughter if her father were in jail for murder, even if one of passion. The best I could do was to stare the other man in his eyes with warning and make myself clear he wasn't welcome to return. I let them both leave in the rain, unharmed. I sat there alone and contemplated what I did to deserve this treatment. I don't have time to grieve. I can only continue to pack it all away and start over worse than I began. I want it to stop. I want to be able to grieve. _end. D-Day progress February 7. After a long battle to turn things around, it has begun. Last night, I put my daughter to bed to have a talk with wife. She was more distant than ever and I wanted to plead with her about us getting help to heal our wounds since we hadn't had time to heal the last year or so. She finally found a job that could afford us time and stress to mend our wounds. She said counseling wouldn't help. After all the effort and progress, the small moments of happiness and respite, the mountains climbed to make myself a better father and husband, the tiny hope that I could keep our family together began to swirl and fade in her cold eyes. I looked her in the eyes and asked what's his name. After a long pause, she answered, I am so terrified. My daughter will never understand or forgive me. I settled for a dream-crushing job to stay in a one-sided relationship that could never heal from the trauma and frustration. Her mother and I used to keep each other above the water just for a while longer. One tiny bit at a time. Together. I put her through college, weathered unemployment, depression and poor health with her. We both started to fight the depression without hurting each other, both got jobs and toiled to eat and live healthier together. She even got a less stressful job and seemed like I could reach her hand and cross the finish line. I could see her through graduate school and finish my continuing education to see a brighter future. I'm very tired. I fought hard. Now all I can do is clean the ashes. I will be selling my home soon. My daughter will soon have 2 lives instead one dream. Later entries, in order. Weeks later. Weeks more. Entropy needs support. So shortly before my wife cheated and left me, I had recurring nightmares and dread. The thought that I would wake up alone one day, aged and left with nobody to love or be loved. To give background, this used to not bother me. My personality has a predisposition to be cold and uncaring to those who didn't know me. I shared what I could perceive as feelings and emotions to only those close to me. It was a personal artifact I had revisited from before I met my soon-to-be ex. The reason she had so much significance to me was I felt like being vulnerable could have meant something to me. Actually leaving a world to loved ones felt comparatively important. I felt more attractive, healthy and even possibly a happier person. With the advent of the cheating and my soon-to-be ex leaving me, I feel like I am bleeding out. Cold calculation started the moment she said the AP's name. I read all these articles about how each subsequent divorce increases the likelihood of divorce probabilities. I feel like I did everything to beat the curve. To not be a statistic. To not lessen the chance of me reaching my new goal. I wasn't stupid. I knew it would require effort on her part, but I did everything to share the happiness we found each other the first 5 years of our marriage. Now I am here. Reading exit and recovery strategies. Prevention. Mitigation. Reclamation. I feel cold going back to what I once was. I don't want to give up, but I feel it happening. Scar tissue where the vulnerability felt good. Searing out what could have been potential to love another the way I wanted. I feel the chances of that happiness slipping away and just being replaced with cold pragmatism. It is the new me watching the cold me stand over saying I am inevitable. It feels bad. At least, while I can still feel. It got so bad, so quick. Update August 26. I just copied all my SMS texts to bring to mediation. I copied as far back as June. The conversations were cheerful, playful, and kind. The kind you would expect from a 13-year relationship. Then, they spaced out. They got worse. Hate to apathy. Apathy to suffering. Suffering to anguish and resentment. I want my family back. Mediation update Sept 2. The mediator called me early. COVID had our mediation handled by phone. I expected a nightmare over the phone with theatrics. I instead got fair compromise. My daughter is now not going to be used as a bargain chip for money. Concessions were made for financial details. I didn't care. I wanted it over. The only real thing she made a big deal about was travel arrangements. Her new AP is in Alabama across state lines. She wants to travel unimpeded. It is nearing the end. Why don't I feel happy? This could have gotten much worse. Why does it not feel like things will get better? You're both together again. Rant. My handoff with my soon-to-be ex was rough today. I came up to my daughter to greet her and give her a hug. She screamed with excitement, "You are together again." In her own 6-year-old parent trap humor. I wish it worked that way, little one. Still not out post-separation Sept 29. I am ready to take the next step. I aim to break the orbit of my failed marriage. I have studied the material meticulously, perhaps too rigidly since I only had comprehensive material. No hands-on for the certification. This exam would represent my readiness to move on. My willingness to succeed in spite of it only being a dream for me to progress and bring greater stability to my family. Under my soon-to-be ex, it would be only a means to keep afloat while she worked out leaving me for her then affair partner. I remember nights before the separation where I brought up these dreams. She would get angry, deflecting any talk of a real future with me. I misread that for concern. It was just her being tired of thinking in terms of us. I would salvage these plans and make them the foundation for me leaving. I aimed to finish my review and get a full night's sleep. I stayed up all night. I barely slept thinking about what would happen if I failed. Sept 30. Exam day. The bridge destroyed by the storm made the trip almost an hour each way. I planned ahead. I took the day off despite management being desperate for extra hours. To hell with them. I will provide for my daughter. I arrived an hour early. I know anxiety and doubt will be my enemies. I review what I had highlighted weakest in my studies. Thoughts crept in. I remember my wife giving me grief when I studied before. She would always say things like I wasn't around enough for her or my daughter, and then complain later how we both didn't have enough income later when the budget would come up. I fought to kill the negative. I wanted to use it. She cheated on me. She offered no help. It wasn't my fault. Time was up. I felt I had resolved. I would finish this. I will move forward. As I approached the front desk a half hour early, next to nobody was there. I asked to check in. They processed me 15 minutes late for quarantine procedures. A long time for me to think. The test starts. Questions more complex than the material context questions laid out to be a sinkhole for time made me up. I remember I should have skipped them from the basic test-taking strategy. The doubt crept in bit by bit. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I was only a tool to be used. No. I screamed at myself internally. This was not the time to falter. 45 questions left. 45 minutes left. I must hurry or I will fail. I can do this. Shut up. 40 minutes after wasting time talking myself up. I just froze. The doubt compounded. The wording was meant to be tricky with double meanings. Sometimes two answers would be correct. One more than the other. These were the easy part. 28 questions left. 15 minutes. I was focusing more on the time than answering the questions. I had failed to keep the house. I was dumb enough to let her position herself into getting me out of her life when the lies came to light. Maybe I don't deserve happiness. 18 questions left. 3 minutes. I was taking longer. The end screen came up. I knew what would come after the survey. The screen was devastating. 15 questions unanswered. 686. 720 would have passed. If I had blindly selected whatever answers were left, statistically, I would have passed. Failure. I wanted to reschedule immediately. COVID had the test centers booked for 3 weeks. I have no idea why. There were 30 seats and 2 people in my time slot. I felt like I had more reason to fail than to succeed. I knew the material. I can't face my daughter. Not after she wasn't good enough for me to get over my ego and stay focused. The only silver lining was she would be going with her grandparents to see her aunt for a visit in Orlando and enjoy Disney the rest of the week. I can hide my shame. October 1. Work started early. Overtime would be needed to pick up the slack from my one-day vacation. It will be a long 3 weeks. I got really good advice to keep physically well and aim to continue on self-improvement. The catch is, when the lies to myself stop and I don't believe in myself, how can I progress? How can I believe in myself if I fail to move on? I was too young. Advice. Need perspective. These words were part of a discussion I had with my soon-to-be ex on the night I discovered. She said a lot of things, but this stuck out. I dismissed it immediately as bullshit and didn't address it because I was so fixed on ending things amicably at that point. She was F22 when we started dating. I asked her when she was halfway in our marriage at F27 if she needed out and promised it was worth staying. F34 when she cheated. Asking anyone with experience with this, could any of this have truth, or is this some more of the same lies? October 21st Foothold update. October 21st. I did it. The dimly lit screen in the testing center sat in front of me for what felt like an eternity before it confirmed it. Something so trivial for some people felt like a mountain for me to overcome, but I did it. Every time my soon-to-be ex kept leaning on me, saying nothing would ever come from the hard work had been exonerated on a single page. The aged printer gave me a faded printout of the results. These words of affirmation mean so much. I have the potential to give my daughter a father to be proud of. I aim to start this new life. There is proof. Having difficulty co-parenting while North Carolina. Advice. Soon-to-be ex is starting to abuse the one line of communication. I tried getting a dialogue on a parenting decision and it turned into her feelings involving riding the bus for our child to school. I was weary on the decision, but I had to make the case on behalf of our daughter because she wants to socialize with a friend riding to school. I explained to my daughter that it would have challenges because of COVID safety procedures and she still wanted to go. I texted my SDB ex. She said she didn't want our daughter riding the school bus for other reasons like physical safety. I remember her and I riding the bus in our childhood with absolutely none of these problems before. With digital cameras and tracking applications available to us, I told her that her feelings weren't invalidated to maintain a dialogue, but she had used them to manipulate me in the past. I needed a better reason. She took me bringing up her tendency to compartmentalize to suit her needs as an affront, not criticism. Things devolved quickly into her gaslighting me again, saying I drove her away by assuming the worst. She used this tactic consistently to disarm me whenever arguments would arise. It gave her room to create a gap between us and eventually cheat while living together. She saw that as a slight and now she wants to meet up Sunday to discuss how I cannot put down her feelings when discussing our daughter's parenting with a bullet point list of topics that are unrelated. Traveling costs, meeting places not discussed on the parenting plan, ECT. She is trying to get me to change what we agreed to in mediation, and I don't know how this meeting will be productive. I have this feeling I am only going to show up to tell her that she has no right to use our daughter's parenting as currency in negotiations. I know she is baiting me, but I can't shut down communication for our daughter's sake. I can't keep letting her manipulate me like this. This isn't how compromise is made. How can I keep this about our daughter and out of her manipulative tendencies? It's just school bus riding arrangements. I can only imagine more important things being worse if I don't address this. Fragile rant November 7. I'm beginning to go from sharp burning embers in my chest to cooling ashes. I wake up with more self-worth. I'm making what feels like progress. I am still in the garbage job that my marriage painfully died in, but I am patiently remaining professional. I have an interview on Monday. The potential future is already coming together. I won't burn bridges, but I will let them collapse from them being poorly built in the first place. I bought my daughter a surprise. Her Nintendo didn't have a micro SD. I think a small celebration is in order. I buy the card. Effortlessly set it up when it hits me. There is a strange profile other than my family on her Switch internal hard drive. It has AP's name. I didn't know which feelings I had, because they bled into one another. Betrayal, anger, fear. It all hit a flashpoint. The end result that stuck was hollowness. I already have a hard enough time keeping up with my daughter, trying to make things better for us. Trying to move on. This small perversion of my family has defeated months of no contact with proof. Proof that my soon-to-be ex has everything she wants. A fair partner doesn't have the overhead of a marriage to deal with. Soon-to-be ex's mother is bankrolling her bachelor pad. They are enjoying the life I wanted for my family in a twisted parody of my hopes and dreams. Game night was something I hoped to have after I got out of this shitty job. I still am swamped with overtime. Something so small. A testament to my failure in something so innocent. I feel hollow. November 9th. The interview went okay. They will most likely call me back. It is a local government position that requires a background check. I should be excited. I'm not. Advice on breaking the loop. Question. Any INTJTs out there have a good way of breaking self-blame? I am currently seeing a professional to address my personal loss with infidelity, but I am having difficulty fully accepting I am not responsible for it, and I have it in my head I can somehow solve this betrayal overnight and make what is left of my family whole again. Sleepless nights. Recurring nightmares where I forgive the betraying spouse lead me to believe the time between sessions are getting worse. I wasn't this way before the abuse, and sessions are limited to what time can be taken off from work. I won't presume the advice as qualified psychological care, but any insight is welcome. Preparing for the holidays update December 17th. Last week the interview was a bust. They had selected a candidate already for the position. I made it to the third and final interview, and even though I am certain I was the second choice, having options would have been better. This weekend was particularly hard. I am trying to keep away from my daughter when I can't keep on a good face for her holiday cheer. She is an absolute beacon of light and for everyone around her, and to take away even a lumen of it would be a crime I could not bear. My parents took her to my grandfather's house. Not to be judgmental, but the place has become a veritable source of unhappiness and unease. His children that moved in are like vultures waiting to snap up a great man's home the moment he stops breathing, and I prefer visiting on my terms with my family every other holiday. This one was a death watch. My grandmother passed away last year, and I only have my failed marriage to warm my grandfather's heart. Instead of a pleasant family visit like other years, my extended family visit included my jaded aunt cheering my wife's absence, a triumph of divorce while my uncle drank himself asleep. Visits to my grandfather used to be sacred. This year felt more like a death watch. My old family is gone. What is left depresses me, but I refuse to show this to my daughter. I sit quietly thinking where I went wrong letting things get this bad and why I stay up late at night. Preparing for the holidays Part 2. Update. December 7th, I got an update from STBX. Exposed to COVID. Working at a restaurant, that means next to nothing, but I wouldn't jeopardize more time with my daughter. 2 weeks in the busy season between the overtime is precious. I got a personal voicemail between calls at work for a contract position with the Virginia. I called back after work on the offer. It was temp work for better pay, no benefits. The risk is too much. My daughter needs medical care and a home, not one or the other. December 8th, STBX had FaceTime with daughter. I left quietly because I can't stand to hear that woman's voice and I don't want my daughter to feel that resentment. I refuse to have my daughter believe she is in any way responsible for her mother's actions or even somehow connect that disgust I have for my wife to my daughter's self-image. December 9th, wife avoided responsibility as usual. Did not explain why our daughter wouldn't see her the next few weeks. I was taking calls for work at home while my mother explained to my daughter what quarantine meant for her mother. My daughter wailed in muffled despair. She misses her family's lost resilience. I wipe away tears in sympathy for my daughter. I maintain professionalism behind the closed door, between fake cheerful tones answering service calls. December 11, work is swamped. Poor staffing, mismanaged workloads and inefficient management of the workforce give me job security, but overtime is still not enough for my goal to provide a stable home for my daughter. I clock out to show her Christmas lights tonight. My daughter deserves normalcy. She will have more than a cracked facade with a smile on it. She isn't a client. She is my reason for doing better. Holiday review post-separation. While in self-quarantine, I have had time to think. I have shelter, food, and employment. I should be happy. Why do I feel like such a failure? Sleep evades me. My greatest fears are coming true. The strings attached are more apparent. My parents are encroaching on my parenting. It started with small things like covering pick-up or drop-off during work hours. Overtime is ridiculous and the pay doesn't cover the cost of childcare. The arrangement once covered the time my wife was finishing grad school. It now covers her time with the current affair partner almost a year later, since she has next to no responsibility working for her mother as co-manager to a pizzeria. The slow gain of influence in our daughter's care is taking more and more autonomy away. Previously, our marriage afforded more direct care. The poetic injustice of this is that when I told my wife I was worried that we relied too much on my parents, her first plan was to tell me we were going to be fine. Days before sleeping with her first affair partner. I desire to be a real father deserving the happiness of his daughter. Not an accessory to a custodial proxy war between my parents and soon-to-be ex. When can I be free of the codependency? I thought hard work and being a loving husband would afford me more than this. I feel like I am starting to ask too much. 1/5. Update. 1/5 lack of sleep is getting to me. Caffeine can do only so much. My supervisor is asking me if I am okay in a side chat. I asked him why, since my metrics exceeded expectations. He forwarded me a call record to review. It was an escalation from an earlier call. The caller was a remote sysadmin. Didn't do any basic troubleshooting, attempted to lead the conversation out of scope and manipulate me into doing his job for him. I could hear the silence and my voice inflection reflected my demeanor when I dealt with my STBX in exchanges. Direct, to the point, and little deviation from what was related to the account being handled. In customer service this is seen as an unwritten rule to be accommodating but mindful. I appear to have associated STBX's behavior toward me with anyone attempting to manipulate me. Professionalism had me address it as room for improvement with my supervisor. Since he respects my work, he sees it as nothing that can't be handled by me. I'm not so sure. 1/7, the queues are understaffed. I receive a letter in the mail on break. A medical bill. Ubgin letterhead. Pregnancy test. STBX thinks she is getting to me. This bothers me less than the fact that I could possibly lose my job seeing manipulative people taking advantage of me differently. My professionalism is all I have. I cannot cave. 1/8, I have reached some form of normalcy. My workload is still heavy with the remote work being done. Productivity is down in my department, and like my previous position, I have taken on the additional responsibilities of other departments. At the end of the day I received a call during normal business hours. I listened to the voicemail in the background while taking a call. It was the staffing agency I had been speaking to. They may have found a position fitting my goals. Government work. We will see how this transpires. I get back to keeping myself busy. Edit. Dates were wrong. It was a long month. The beginning update pretext: to avoid your mistakes, you must see that you made them. March 2007. Things are about to wrap up for college. I am currently a full-time student with 2 part-time jobs, but the student analyst position working on the campus ends with my graduation. The extra time available to me may be a foreign concept. Since I took it slow, the government/state assistance and my supplemental income from working at a home improvement warehouse afforded me the freedom I am about to enjoy. Next stop: work on my appearance for interviews for an actual career. I'll start with a haircut. The haircut is uneventful, fit for an office job. I walk out. There she is. My high school crush. The same person who had a falling out because she wanted to focus on finishing college was working part-time at a Pizza Hut next to a barber shop. The last time I saw her, things didn't end well for us. She thought I was getting too close and had to work on her. She was in a holding pattern and was rethinking life. I smiled politely and waved her on her way because I had really no obligation to her at that point, and I took what she said seriously. She wanted to work on her, and there she was. Later that weekend I get a call. It was her. I hadn't changed my number since the last we met. She told me that she missed me being there for her and wondered if we could do something. Despite my reservations on how she treated me last time, I genuinely enjoyed her company when it was welcome, and I thought there could be no harm. On the subsequent dates, she had explained to me how her family was oppressively religious, and the real reason I couldn't be in a relationship with her was because I didn't share her religion. Note for author: this is where you ducked up. It is a red flag when she blames her family or her faith. I took this as a challenge. If she believed in this faith and God was the reason for her unhappiness, I would not only find a solution where she can have her family, I would find a way to not lose myself in the process. I told her, okay, why don't we give it a go? I felt the trick with religion is that it is a social currency. It can either be invested to make people genuinely happy or do great things, or it can debt people oppressively and hold power over them. Simply put, I knew Jehovah's Witnesses were part of a cult centered around a power dynamic centered around elders. If I played their game, prayed to their God and saved this woman in the process, I felt I would have made something of myself. The studies were pretty straightforward. I was assigned a guide to their faith. I asked tough questions and left no illusions that I would respect their faith but maintain my individuality. Normal guides would see this as a problem if complete mental submission weren't made, but my guide was a relatively new convert and had radical views himself. We got along fine. I had shown commitment to the relationship we had, and we kept the bond secret in public at first. Dating outside their faith was something that could get you kicked out. There's that red flag. Things had almost come to a head when I was slated for baptism only a few months later. The elders didn't see any benefit for me. They had plenty of other young men that had economic ties to feed their power base, and another warehouse rat was only going to be a liability. My girlfriend saw the facade begin to peel and had to make a decision. She would either have to abandon us or leave the faith and come with me. I didn't mince words. When she informed me that there may be no way they would accept me, it felt like the way we fell out last time. I told it was okay and gave her an out. Family and faith are important things. She instead came up with a plan. She would ghost the faith and her family. Red flag. The egalitarian in me demanded she doesn't compromise her faith and 100% not leave her family. I asked her to find a way to compromise and she assured me she would find a way. For her to risk such things put me in an awkward position. I just wanted closure. To see if I could be a good boyfriend. This would demand a life debt in my eyes. I think she knew that. February 2009. Months later I got a job at a telecom company and we moved into an apartment. She didn't fully sever ties and it bothered me that she could create a second life like this and enjoy living it. I decided to take drastic measures. After almost 1.5 years of being together, I decided to marry this woman. I got along with her really well. She was a friend and in my eyes, she was willing to change her life for me. The best part was that being married outside the faith doesn't technically kick you out. I would legitimize our relationship and keep her from losing her family. Just the opposite happened. She had done exactly what she said she would do. She ghosted her family and her faith. I was so blinded by the happiness that I, in my pride, came up with a solution that would complete another human being. Postscript: people have observable patterns. She ghosted me, made another life and abandoned her family again. What did I expect to happen? Perhaps I did deserve this. Newlyweds update March 2009 I married her on St. Patrick's Day at a courthouse. I was broke, but I managed to buy her a puzzle ring with diamonds inset. About much more than my income could afford, but this woman meant the world to me. I insisted her family attend. Her father did not show. This saddened me, but her mother and brother did. Her mother put on a show. Inside I knew this woman was furious. I wanted to ask for their blessing first, but my wife insisted it would complicate her ability to keep her family. I relented. Her mother had a smile on her face, but it wasn't in her eyes. I promised her I would do everything to make her daughter happy. I have a feeling she didn't care. Her image of her family was shattered. Her husband cheated and left her. Her daughter ghosted their faith. I had a feeling I would need to do my best to repair what I could. Just not today. Today was a happy day. Soon after marriage, I found a job at a wireless home internet service provider. The hours were rough, but the alternative was my one remaining part-time job. This was a no-brainer. My wife and I moved into a new apartment. I couldn't be happier. Apartment life was decent. We had a roommate who was a high school friend. We did everything we could together. Times were great. Early in the relationship, I had exposed all my vulnerabilities. My communication gaps. If we fought, I insisted it would be to make us stronger. Anything she threw at me, I would see it as a chance for growth. Hours at work got longer. My wife's part-time job airbrushing moved farther away. Her business partner found a kiosk in a tourist beach farther away. I felt this worked out because I had already felt guilty working extra hours at work. I made every attempt to visit her on off hours because I missed every minute without her. Work was getting rough. They were restructuring under new management and the workload tripled. I took solace in the woman who made things better. October 2012 I have been brought to a staff meeting notifying our office we are being laid off. This had just happened when my wife and I were making plans to move into a house. I broke the news to my wife. She said everything would be alright. I wasn't so sure. January 2013 the office officially closes. I had put out resumes everywhere. About 400 employees flooded the market looking for the same work as I, and I had no luck. I had registered for unemployment and continued to actively look for work. I started getting worried. My wife told me she didn't care. Arguments showed otherwise. Communication started lapsing on small things. Dishes. Errands. I treated it like before. I welcomed me being a better husband. She assured me it was okay. April 2013, unemployment is not covering the cost of living. I had scaled back to green beans and canned goods as meals. I joked with my wife saying that I'll make a culinary expert out of myself to compensate for the income drop. I insisted she not drop her quality of life because I was the one without income. She laughed it off, but something didn't feel right. I felt like the support was waning. I made every effort to still see her at her job with what little money I had to spare gas. She appeared to appreciate it. I knew she would appreciate it more if I had fixed the job situation. A month passed, and my wife became pregnant. I started dipping into my 401k savings from the warehouse job I left. I will not have my wife suffer for my failure. February 2014, my daughter was born. I am excited and terrified. My parents are helping with my wife and I in childcare as I take odd jobs between unemployment. I am beginning to lose heart, but I need to keep going. I will be a good husband and father. I must. May 2014, finally a break in unemployment. Another ISP was hiring. I qualified at a pay cut. I took it regardless. I was desperate for security. My wife seemed happy. I don't know why it didn't feel like things were getting better. She was more distant whenever money came up. Months passed on and me being the breadwinner wasn't cutting it. I asked my wife if she felt like airbrushing was her career goal since she didn't finish college yet. She said she wanted to finish college and give it a try for something more. I told her that I supported this and would dedicate whatever it takes for her to succeed. I loved this woman. Our future is bright. I will make it out of this bad situation. I will make a life together, whatever the cost. Further entropy update June 2015 The real decay started after mobile. I questioned her motives on where we were going and the fight did nothing to help us grow as a couple. When we got home, I asked her forgiveness and tried to reinforce that I was willing to continue our relationship despite any setback, and if she felt my outburst had destroyed what we worked for, I understood. She told me I was paranoid and that my depression was eroding our marriage. I started getting help. The gaslighting started the moment she knew this argument would destroy me. Anytime something of worth needed to be discussed, anytime I felt bad or couldn't quite grasp why things weren't getting better, she would go cold, remind me about the mobile trip. August 2015. I got a call from my wife. The car broke down. We debated if she would fix the car or buy a new one. I insisted we co-sign and get her a decent commuter car since her job is roughly an hour away. Her credit was shit. I asked why. She explained she accrued $9,000 in debt during her pregnancy. I asked her how that was possible since my parents took care of her when our daughter was born and we fought. She said it wasn't worth the hassle. I reminded her we were in this together. Debt too. I was concerned about the debt being hidden, not that she had it. Note, this was another red flag. This set a precedent. Important decisions were made on eggshells. Things were not looking good. 125 update 125. I'm late getting out of work and getting anxious because my daughter is in the living room and has gone quiet. I check in between calls and she is napping. I wrap things up with work and check in on her. She wakes up and I prepare her dinner. She asks where her grandparents are and I tell her they are out for the evening. I can't leave her alone. She grabs a tablet and makes an offhand comment that I can just leave her with the dog, and I say no. Something isn't right in the back of my head and I ask her who said it's okay to be left alone with our dog. She said mommy leaves me with their dog. I ask the follow-up question, are you alone with their dog sometimes? She corrects herself and says that second AP is there with her. Inside I explode. I've kept it together and reassured that the only tie that woman would ever have on me this day forth was our daughter, and I warned her that if she ducked with that, I would do everything in my power to protect her from her sometimes. I try and calm down. I text her asking about it. She downplays and trickle truth me. The arrangement was family or professionals. If she wanted to include her boyfriend, we could have discussed it. Instead she made it about her. What if I marry him? Typical. She turns the care of our daughter into her feelings again. I get on her level. I attack her self-image instead of actual progress with the care of our daughter. Reminder that you can be broken. Do better. See save texts for reference. This undermines parenting agreement. I usually keep my emotions in check, but I am tired. My daughter is the only thing left to me, and I want my wife to remember not to duck around with my daughter's safety. I handle this poorly. Again, she tries to get closure at my expense instead of owning up to responsibility. She wants to justify her actions. To get closure, nothing gets done. I reread the texts and it sinks in. She wanted this. Instead of doing basic things like notifying me when our daughter is left with a stranger, she is willing to put no effort in and just let that poison me since she can't get to me any other way because of my North Carolina arrangements. I thought I was healing. Now I'm just bitter. Cleaning house update April 2020. My uncle came from Los Angeles for an unexpected visit. I didn't expect anyone down to visit, even if it was my birthday weekend. I had given my wife almost 2 months to refinance and she said there would be no way for her to do this on her credit. I mentioned that my alternative was selling the house and splitting it 50-50 beforehand, so we are moving forward with the preparation of the sale. I felt a pang of despair as all the work I had put into the house was being put in boxes, but the other thing I felt but didn't know was pure shame. I had brought up the point several times that we would need to repair the home. We had gotten it cheap, but if we were going to make a life in that home, we would need to save money for repairs and we had never properly maintained it. I had luckily put most of my money left after paying for my wife's education into home warranty plans to take care of larger expenses, but the kitchen and other parts of the house had some cosmetic damage and weren't properly maintained. My uncle and father said nothing, but the silence was enough. Alcohol cans everywhere, laundry left in piles left unsorted, vinyl peeling from the kitchen floor, carpet stains in corners behind furniture. Even if I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol, even if it wasn't my laundry, even if the house was poorly kept while I wasn't at work, it was my responsibility. I had been wary for so long that I would never tell my wife she needed to cut back on the drinking or clean up after herself. In my mind she was as exhausted as I was and a triage was all I could figure out. Small weekends taking our daughter out were probably the only happiness I could get since I convinced myself it would all end when my wife had more time to herself again. Little did I know at the time she already had and was just creating another life with first AP while her mother was grooming her for her to leave me and possibly get back into the truth with her and her brother. Disgusting, my uncle said as he went through all her filth. He said it out loud, possibly thinking that I was putting up with her habits for far too long, but I owned up to it with I should have done better. I remembered all the fights before my wife went cold. I asked her if there was anything I could do to help better. She said that I shouldn't have to ask. I walked on eggshells after that. She was getting worse then. He probably was measuring the statement since he was biased for me, but I'm sure that he didn't see that I was enabling this and I left my daughter, his grandniece, in this filth. Hours passed by and we got most of the heavy things, bed frame, furniture, appliances etc., into a rented trailer. I had offered my wife to bring these things to her new apartment she had found. I intended to junk most of everything else when I moved out, since I had no plans to be cheated on. She had joined us to determine where we would leave the furniture. In the cab of the truck, I had gone over the finer details of the sale of the house and splitting of our assets. I brought up the car her brother took from me. She had an outburst time getting ducked. I was left speechless. Here we were sifting through the ashes of the home she had destroyed and she had the audacity to tell me I was being unreasonable. Since money was really a low priority for me and I wanted my wife to be tied up in it while I made arrangements to bring my daughter into a stable environment, I swallowed my pride and said we would put a pin in it. When we arrived at the new apartment, I was shocked. It was in a dilapidated part of town near bars and social gathering places. The hip part of town instead of a quiet neighborhood with a decent school. I had reminded my wife that I would keep our daughter in the current school with her grandparents because the school had a higher rating, and she waved it off as if it weren't even a priority. I moved the heavy appliances to the fixtures. I managed to see the filthy bathroom in the process. Mold everywhere. I bit my tongue hard and gave her a cordial farewell. My parents wanted me to join them and my daughter for a birthday dinner with my uncle. I politely declined and said I had other plans to clean up. I ended the day sleeping in the empty house alone in a sleep bag. I couldn't be seen. Not like this. Hearing day update February 10th, the day of the hearing for the dissolution of marriage. After more than a year of my wife dragging her feet, the day of the hearing had me terrified. I had convinced myself that after so many requests for change in the documentation, after one completely useless mediation meeting, no change in the original plan was needed. I somehow felt she would somehow make a reading some dramatic deus ex machina for some small change to delay the process further. It was clumsy. She requested more time to go over healthcare expenses. She had almost a whole year with the information she needed, and the magistrate said the court will decide based on what she submitted. Since she most likely falsified her income report, she does the books, she probably shot herself in the foot. It was never about money. I could care less as long as it was finished. They said it will be 15 days unless there was evidence that what the magistrate was doing would be unlawful. 15 days. I may finally have closure because she cheated her way out of our marriage. Hopefully she won't cheat the legal system. This is why I have trust issues. Rant. Admitted to the affair in 2020, weeks after we had the "we're gonna make it" talk. Now she wants to change the narrative when I'm asserting myself in the care of our child. And that's how I felt. You can feel however you want, daughter's interests are not your feelings. It's how you're trying to make me feel now, but like you, I am resistant to it. You, this time right now, are assuming the worst of me. And it reminds me of back then, when you would do it sometimes. Is that better? I'm not trying to make you feel anything. Your actions lead me to believe you have little interests outside your own. It's not my job to remind you how destructive that is. I will, however, remind you that your daughter has needs, and I will advocate for them. Like how I pay for her medical coverage already. I have a vested interest in her care. I fell out of love with you in 2012 but continued to try to make it work. That wore on me. You say I was lying. But I was trying to hobble along anyway. Now I'm lying and only have my interests in mind. Just because I don't want to pretend to play house with you anymore doesn't mean I don't want what's. Thoughts on WandaVision? Untagged spoilers for those who didn't finish. The coming to terms with the loss of a life partner and coming to terms with burying them. The will to end the dichotomy of reality and an ideal world love lost. It had pretty rough stuff. I liked the series, but sometimes the fragments of the fake world don't go away. It was a good story though. Update. 4 halves stability update 4 halves. Work is tolerable. I have come to peace that my old home is gone. My new home no longer feels like a debtor's prison, and I am actively pushing to make improvements. I have made weight loss for a better employment opportunity, and if I place well in a vocational aptitude test, I will be able to make the next step in my life. I will have much to contend with, considering I still have a self-confidence problem I must confront. My goals require that I don't cave on stress. I must test well for placement, and the second job requires a certainty in myself to be effective. I am not certain if I will ever realize my goal to have a whole family again, but the end goal of having enough freedom to be a full father will be enough for now. I hope that the next update includes encouraging news for those suffering similar circumstances. The lack of serotonin is still there, but it seems possible that things may get better. 415 further setbacks update 415. I tirelessly worked to find the most direct solution to get out of the hell of being between homes and stability for my daughter. 2 opportunities came about. I had worked hard for both. Involves military service. I went to a recruiter and applied to be an officer before my age cut off. I had a degree in a related field and did exceedingly well on ASVAB. I was told I could pick any vocation available or try the more competitive officer track with more benefits aligned for the care of my daughter in mind. I was approached by a tech staffing agency to fulfill the need for a contract to service equipment for a higher-end government contract. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like I could put in the hard work and effort to change things, and it could result in the shelter and stability I stressed myself to achieve for my daughter and I. I lost more than £100 and studied hard for continuing education and qualifications for the required security. That was until 4/16. I was being processed when a questionnaire review caught a detail that would disqualify me. It turns out that the waiver process for AD/ADHD is extremely difficult to obtain, and me not taking any medication for the past 10 years or any special treatments is not enough to meet the needs of reserve military service. These details were 20+ years old and I thought it would not matter. The recruiter was reprimanded harshly and I may not qualify. I will disclose what I have, but they insist on records I do not have to clear me. This would not be so bad if my clearance for the other opportunity would be contingent on honest disclosure of records. Think felons declaring criminal activity. I am at a loss. Every attempt to improve the situation may be crumbling to the ground. If I don't find a way out of this hell with all the hard work and effort I put in, I fear my daughter will be at the mercy of a father who cannot provide security or happiness indefinitely. Considering, should I give up? Advice: how it was. D-Day was February 2020. I had a long battle with depression that started when my wife started distancing me and developing an exit strategy after the birth of our daughter. I fought hard to keep my family together. After unemployment, underemployment, bad hours and very little family time, I pushed hard to fight to get my family back. I got help with a psychologist, focused on being there more for my family, started continuing education and focusing on improving health. Wife snapped when excuses ran out. With me improving happiness and health, she decided to stop waiting for me to lose myself and had an exit affair, downgrading hard. To be amicable, she wanted to be a co-parent. I made a snap decision based on what was best for my daughter as a last-ditch effort to keep my daughter afloat and make the easiest transition possible for her. I swallowed my pride, moved in with my parents, and kept my terrible job to dedicate everything I had to recover some normalcy to be a good father. I set the goals of selling the house to get half a start for a new home, started dedicating all my free time to continuing education and exercise, and applied everywhere that would be a net benefit or positive direction for my daughter to have home 2.0. Great on paper. How it's going? I now am a bitter divorcee dealing with an ex-wife who is difficult to co-parent with. It was never about what was best for our daughter. It was all about image for my ex, and her ability to discard her daughter like a coat to a closet when she doesn't want to wear it. Instead of 2 separate whole homes, my daughter has 2 fractured houses. 1, a bachelorette pad to share with my ex, a roommate and her app. Another home is shared between a father who is mentally exhausted and her grandparents. A sad man who is overeducated, underemployed, overworked, and fake happy in an effort to not take away what little happiness a little girl can have at her, hopefully, temporary stay at grandparents. This brings up a valid question, though. I've had a whole year to find this little girl a home and make things better. Am I really doing her any favor? Not only am I no closer to finding her a new home to live in, I have instead taken more hours away from her dedicated to continuing education that has no new prospects, and lost and maintain weight at a cost of even greater time just so I can throw away any health gained with depression, insomnia, and sedentary work conditions. I give my ex shit for leaning on my parents for child care, but by keeping my shifty job and failing to improve things, have I really done any better? I swallowed my pride and moved my daughter out of my old house because there was nothing to salvage. It felt like the right thing to do. Why does it feel like I need to protect her from my failure? I'm setting an example for her, and I don't see myself as a role model anymore. I see myself as a liability. Should I just give in and be the absent father who saves up for when she needs it the most, or should I remain the aberration of a life that brought her nothing but failure and pain? A change in direction? Advice. It's been a year and change. I've given myself some slack for the whole working my way to acceptance thing. Some people have given assurance that things get better, others have pointed out observations that I am trying to chase after what was lost, and this is unhealthy. Looking for recommendations since busy work doesn't seem to be cutting it anymore. I have lost weight from 300 pounds to 180. Finished continuing education cert I was working on. Spent next to nothing and saved up, spending nothing on myself from saved food and entertainment, with the exception of child enrichment activities. STEM lab kits are cheap and the park is cheaper. Changed from marriage counseling to divorce recovery with psychologist. Attempted to keep consistency with irregular work schedule. I know the real pain is yet to come, and the insomnia and grief will be in cycles, but busy work is running out and I'm hitting a wall. Did anyone else find the time to actually grieve, or does the 5-hour sleep schedule become the new norm until I can forgive myself? Some people recommended just giving in and settling for happiness, but I can tell you right now that I am disgusted with myself considering it, and to admit failure would also jeopardize my role of being a father. Any advice other than it gets better? Self-care can only go so far, and I am starting to think my obsession with getting back on track is wearing me out with little to no results. Substantial dating is out of the question because nothing good can come from what my current mindset attracts, and would distract from my family's needs. Vacation time is eaten up by interview dates for other jobs to get me out of my current situation. I feel like I'm not doing enough. Something is missing. 6/4 uneven ground. Uneven footing progress 524. My ex is being difficult with the ruling from the judge. She insists that the direct deposit set up for child support isn't secure and insists on breaking North Carolina to pay cashier checks in person. I don't care about the money, and I assert to her that there is no reason for me to communicate unless it is about our daughter's safety. She insists on showing up during work hours. She persists, continues to feign being a victim. She brings up personal health concerns or anything not directly related to the care of our daughter. I ask her to stop and simply deposit the money in her daughter's account. 6/2. Onboarding for a new contract has begun. I'm worried to death since the transition was handled poorly. The contract position I am working for already switched companies, and I have no documents for transition benefits to cover my daughter's health insurance. I fear how long the gap will be. The plan once involved our family switching insurance so I could provide more when I made it to a decent contract. Now everything is up in the air. Hopefully things improve so I can lock my daughter back in, since I no longer have a partner to fall back on. 6/4 the weekend approaches. The new contract leaves me uneasy. The new hours leave me without time to see my therapist. I have nobody to consult with. I hope I made the right decision to risk it all. I should be happy. The potential for growth is exponentially greater than where I was, but I am treating myself like I am unemployed. I am keeping myself busy and keeping things normal around my daughter, but I spend next to nothing in fear that the next paycheck is my last. I hope to see improvements soon. I can't have these thoughts. When is it okay to love yourself again? Advice. To explain, I have identified and acknowledged self-hatred after being left by a covert narcissist, and I fear that I could have done the same. I stopped myself from telling her I could do better and instead said, what can I do to make things better for us? I would always apologize if I would say anything that could hurt her or jeopardize her feeling loved, but the feeling was always there, building. Where do I take responsibility for my actions after being left? I know she takes pride in the fact that my family always had a family that supersedes everything, and she could leave on favorable terms because my daughter is the only thing I have left in this family. Instead of a man who feels like he has the opportunity to seek out new things, I feel like an aberration of a past life, duty-bound to what is left of my family. It would destroy me if my daughter found out these feelings, and I also fear that my self-love would lessen what she deserves. I've seen too many children left because two narcissists started new separate lives to accommodate selfish needs. To clarify, my daughter will always be top priority. Being a realist, is it unreasonable to think this is mutually exclusive to self-love? Is it okay to just keep thinking this way? I keep telling myself it is worth more to give up a little happiness to compensate for the void a narcissist left, and to abandon this thought is just the easy way out and leaves a child between two narcissistic parents. It surprised even myself when the woman I loved for over a decade was too proud of her self-image to want help or to acknowledge her self-image was more important than family. I don't want to be a hypocrite and take a page from this book. Edit, thanks for all the advice. I know I still have some self-image problems to work on, and I was working on them before D-Day. I'm very worried that self-care could turn into a self-centered situation. I'll try very hard to keep away from the latter of the two. Possible end. Closure update 7.1-. I am reaching some level of normalcy. The ex is still being difficult with handoffs, but not to a point of outright breaking the parenting agreement. She is finally honest with her bitterness and has dropped the facade of working with me to use our daughter as leverage for better treatment in her exit affair. I admittedly still hold a little bitterness to what was done to me, but I actively discard these feelings to make room for more important things like moving forward without forcing it. I have maintained no contact to the best of my ability and have begun setting aside a considerable sum for my daughter's new home once the housing market adjusts. Although I still feel uncertain of my future, I genuinely feel like taking small risks will not lose my child's support anymore, and I am going to take my focus away from just surviving to what I perceive as finding closure. Since my attention wanders frequently, I will only dabble in helping others with the same problem when personal experiences might merit being of any help. I hope these records help either myself or others who share similar experiences in the future if it is needed to help avoid unnecessary pain. Until then, I think I will leave these logs alone and say that the chapter of suffering to an exit affair has come to an end, leaving me with only day-to-day challenges now.